On today's episode, I'm going to be breaking down the past draft picks from General Manager Brandon Beane. Welcome in, everybody, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast, a show here on the Buffalo FamBase network. My name's Two Changs. You can find me and this podcast on all social media platforms and audio platforms, and of course, on YouTube. Thanks for listening in. So, as you might have heard, today's episode is going to be all about Brandon Beane and mainly about his draft pick history, because lately I feel like people have been giving him a lot of criticism, even though he's had a pretty good, solid offseason, in my opinion. But it is fair to point the finger at him and say, well, you know, he hasn't really hit on a lot of draft picks. So I feel like that's been kind of surfacing around. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And I'm going to take a deeper dive. So without further ado, let's get into it. And I do want to start off by saying there's more to being a GM than drafting, but it is a super crucial part that you hit on some of those draft picks. And obviously he's hit on some key players. So let's get into it. But first and foremost, I just want to say how stoked I am that Josh Allen is on the cover of Madden 2024. That's just super exciting. I got into football because of that video game, and just to see a Bills player, someone who I personally have rooting interest in, to be on the cover of that notorious game is just nothing short of like awesome. And I just know us as Bills fans are really stoked. If you're anything like me, you're probably gonna get maybe 1-2 copies. I don't know. Maybe I'm overdoing it, but that is a lot of money for a video game that's gonna just get re-released a year later with some other person on it. Hey, maybe it'll be another Bills player, hopefully. But anyways, before we get into this, I do want to put a disclaimer out there that I'm not going to be talking about the 2023 draft class because it's way too soon to be talking about them, and they haven't even finished their rookie year, so it's not fair. And it kind of seems unfair that I'm going to be talking about the 2022 draft class since they've only got a year underneath their belt, but I'm going to still try to go through the motions with them and give you my honest and fair opinion. So the way I'm going to do this is that I'm going to rank these picks from bad to meh to good, but this isn't necessarily all about the play of the player themselves, but it also has to do with the value and opportunity cost of the pick as well. So there's 39 draft picks from 2018 to 2022, and before we get into anything, there are some non-applicables. So out of 100%, 15.4% are non-applicables, and these are players that were claimed off of practice squads or waiver wires for the most part. We'll get to the one person who doesn't really count there. If you're smart and you pay attention, you know who I'm talking about. But these players consist of Luke Tenuta, which I believe he went to the Packers. Rashad Wildgoose, remember the Goose is loose? Well, he went to the Jets. I'm not sure where he is now. Jack Anderson got plucked off and went to the Eagles. I think he's still there. Jake Fromm, the Giants grabbed him, but I don't think he's playing for a team right now. And before I talk about Jake Fromm, I do want to say that I think this pick was specifically for insurance purposes for the COVID year when you could carry 3 quarterbacks, or maybe you couldn't carry 3 quarterbacks, but I just know that he was doing some side work just in case any quarterback caught COVID. So that was kind of a weird situation with Jake Fromm. Other 2 players that are non-applicable, Matt Ariza, well, he never made it past the preseason with the whole situation of the lawsuit and whatnot, and yeah, I'm just not going to go there. Last time I heard, he had a workout scheduled with the Jets, and I don't know if he got signed, but he just literally doesn't apply here. And then the last non-applicable here is Damar Hamlin, and I don't personally feel comfortable talking about Damar's play considering what he has gone through recently, and I think that he's actually suited up at OTAs right now and practicing, which is really encouraging to hear. And it's nothing short of a miracle, if you ask me. That's just my opinion. It's just the whole situation super devastating, and also really, really cool to see the fraternity of fans and players and the league itself come around the situation and really just make something beautiful out of a tragedy. But yeah, I'm not going to talk about him as a player right now. So let's get into the bad, because 25.6% of those 39 picks from 2018 to 2022, I personally thought were bad picks. So in 2018, the first bad pick is Austin Proehl, a wide receiver. I think he was a 7th round pick. You know, with that 7th round pick, he probably wasn't going to make the team, and he didn't. And honestly, at the time, it just felt like a whatever throwaway pick. I think they just did it because there were some relations there. Maybe not. He just wasn't that guy. I just wasn't excited about it. In 2019, the first real bad pick, in the 2nd round, they took Cody Ford. And yeah, that man had no business playing tackle. Remember when they announced him, like, the Bills select Cody Ford, tackle? No, he had no business playing tackle with those slow-ass feet of his. And the Bills also didn't do him any favors by kind of, like, switching around his position, like guard, tackle, left guard, right guard, like all this other stuff, bouncing him around, and he just couldn't stick and develop. And eventually they were like, this isn't working. And then he gets traded to the Cardinals, and I think he's on Cincinnati now. I'm not entirely sure, but what I do know is that he was a bad pick. The next bad pick was Vosean Joseph in the same year. It honestly felt like a huge swing that I knew was going to miss. It was just like, it's kind of like when you know something's not going to work, but you're like, yeah, I'm just going to do it anyway. That's how I felt about the Vosean Joseph pick, and he didn't make the roster. I believe it was a 5th round pick, if I'm not mistaken. Kind of just felt like we could have done more there than that. The next bad pick, and I feel kind of so bad about saying this, but the next bad pick is Jaquan Johnson. And the reason why I really don't like this pick is that he does not move the needle for me as a depth safety. Anytime that I saw this man take the field, since, Micah Hyde went down or Jordan Poyer went down last year, this man would step into the lineup and we would just get torched. I didn't even realize how, it shows you how ignorant I am, how important safety play was until Jaquan Johnson stepped in. And obviously the disparity and drop and the level of play is different when you're going from All-Pro Poe and Micah Hyde to Jaquan Johnson. Teams will just pick on this dude because he's super undersized, and again, he's just really hard to watch because it's just like, what are you doing? So not a fan about that, but he's on to the Las Vegas Raiders, and it is what it is. The next bad player, Tommy Sweeney. And now he's not a bad player. I just think the pick itself was bad. And this might come as an unpopular opinion because I know the fans and the team love Tommy Sweeney. But the reality is, and the way I look at it, is that the Buffalo Bills have always tried to bring in legit competition at tight end too. And they usually beat out Tommy Sweeney to get that position, and he's usually been a healthy scratch. I'm thinking about Quentin Morris, Jacob Hollister. Obviously didn't make the team, but the intent was still there. O.J. Howard and other players. And then this past year, they get Dalton Kincaid. Now, obviously, Tommy Sweeney goes to the Giants, but it was clear that they didn't really feel a whole lot comfortable with him being the tight end too. So I just didn't really see him as a good value pick. The next bad value picks comes in 2022, and it's AJ Epinesa. Man, some of you might not like that, but I just, I'm just not a fan. I was not a fan of the pick at the time that it happened, and I'm still not a fan of the pick right now. That's just how I feel. I understand he had 6.5 sacks last season, but he hasn't really panned out, in my opinion. It's like, I don't know, and it's similar to the Tommy Sweeney point that I just mentioned. Brandon Beane picked AJ Epinesa, but what has Brandon Beane done since then? He's literally looked at free agents. He's literally tried picking more draft picks to fill out this position, and AJ Epinesa just really hasn't stepped up, in my opinion. There were flashes, but it's not consistent enough, and I mean, he's going into a contract year, so maybe he'll have a little more gas to him, but I just wasn't a fan of the pick then, and like I said, I'm still not really a fan of him now. So, for that reason, I just thought it was bad value, and therefore a bad pick. Zach Moss. Zach Moss. I don't really need to say anything else about that. I had way higher hopes for him, but he wasn't even okay. He just wasn't it at all. And the Bills tried. It just wasn't working out. So we got traded. It is what it is. The next bad pick, and this might kind of rub people the wrong way, but Boogie Basham. It's similar to how I look at the AJ Epinesa pick the year before, because I also wasn't a fan of this pick at the time, more so because of the opportunity cost, especially with the power of hindsight. And we as fans always like to look back and go like, oh, we could have got this person, we could have got that person, and it's really hard not to do that, especially when you could have gotten Creed Humphrey, but instead you got a defensive end out of Wake Forest that sometimes is a healthy scratch on game days and hasn't made an impact as a second-round pick. In my opinion, that's super frustrating. Super frustrating. And the next frustrating pick that I think was a bad one that ended up panning out not working out is Marquez Stevenson. Couldn't stay healthy, which isn't his fault, obviously. It's just kind of like, I'm more upset that of the situation than, obviously he can't control that. But he was too iffy as a returner when he was trying to do that. He was a kickoff returner, not a punt returner. The Bills tried making him do that. It was too iffy, just not enough production on the field or in special teams. He got cut. Not a great value pick. 2022, and here's the last of the bad picks. And again, you might not like this, but it's the Terrell Bernard pick. Again, it seems unfair. Similar to the way how Bills fans initially felt about the Dorian Williams pick is exactly how I felt about the Terrell Bernard pick. But I felt more upset about the Terrell Bernard pick than Dorian Williams because we could have had other players on the board. And it seemed like a reach. Terrell Bernard, you reached for him, I think. And from what I'm hearing, he's running like 13 reps. It's not what you want from your third-round pick. It really isn't. But who knows? He really could turn it on in this mini camp battle or just camp battle in general and maybe get the starting middle linebacker job. I don't know. It's a legit competition which should get the best out of each player. And I really hope this makes Terrell into the best possible version of himself and hopefully make him really an impact starter, because that would change everything. Let's get into the meh players, and this roughly took about 18% of the picks. Of the 39 picks, 18% of them were meh. And we'll start in 2019, and that's Daryl Johnson. And I think Daryl Johnson was a borderline good player for the Bills. He had some splash plays during the preseason, his rookie year, and really contributed to special teams. However, when he got traded to Carolina, that was really the end of hearing him, right? Which kind of tells you that he was more depth and a special teams only player. And the Bills traded him away because at that time we just had we thought we had loads and loads of depth at defensive end. So why would we keep a player that we're going to cut eventually? It does make sense. And it also kind of proves that he was more of a meh player anyway, if that's what you're going to do with him. I like him. I think he's on the 49ers now, but it's kind of like the same old thing with the situation that he was in Buffalo. You went from a fairly deep defensive line room to another fairly deep, definitely deep defensive line room there. So I don't know how it's going to work out for him. The next meh player, and that's Tommy Doyle. I, again, don't think it's necessarily fair for me to say he's meh, but it's mainly because he lost a year because he tore his ACL last year. And first off, I will give him so much prop for standing out there, gutting it out for the rest of that game against Miami and doing that. It takes a lot of gut, and that's insane. I don't know if he knew he tore it or if he, felt off, but the fact that he finished that game is nothing short of just courageous, I guess. It was just insane. And I'm curious to see what he can do on the O-line. But being stuck behind the starters that we have right now and having little to no opportunity to showcase his talents, especially being on recovering from an ACL tear, it kind of makes you wonder, does he have the talent to crack the starting lineup? And if you do, what does that mean for the people around him? What does that do for the depth? It brings a lot of questions that I'm not necessarily sure that he's going to even break the starting lineup to begin with, but I don't think he's bad. So he's meh to me, honestly. The next meh player, I'm pausing because I'm debating saying it, but I'm going to do it. It's Spencer Brown, which is a huge debate right now with Bills fans. Some say he's a bust, straight up bust. And some say he's really good. I think he's got flashes of greatness, and he's got flashes of being really bad at the same time. He's got explanations for his lack of development, and I don't like calling them excuses. They're all about explanations. Not playing 11-11 football in high school, losing a year in college due to COVID, the back injury, surgery, etc. The list goes on. It's just I need to see a step in one direction or the other. And for that reason of not having a strong indicator to determine if he's kind of upper echelon or lower echelon is the reason why he's in the meh area. That doesn't mean he's bad, but it also doesn't mean he's good. So that's why I put him there. The next meh player, again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, this doesn't seem fair to talk about the 2022 class because they've only had a year underneath their belt, and that's what we're going to get into, the 2022 class now. And it's just because they haven't really played enough, but that doesn't mean they're not going to be superstars, and it's just where I would personally rank them right now. And I'm going to start off with Balen Spector. I think it's cool that he made the team last year. He's in the running for that middle linebacker competition, which, he could possibly win, I guess, but I'm not sure if he's going to win that job, so who knows? I know he contributes a lot to special teams, but that's kind of similar to the Daryl Johnson situation, which is what was the first Matt player I talked about. And with the emphasis of the new kickoff rule, with the fair catch and stuff, it kind of almost de-emphasizes the need for special teams aces, so it's like, what are we going to do with you? Kind of makes you meh. The next meh player, Khalil Shakir. I felt like it took forever for this man to really get deployed with the Buffalo Bills. And I think I noticed that he started getting a lot more burn in that second regular season game against the Dolphins. And I know this because I was at that game behind the Bills bench, and I was like, oh, Shakir's going in. Oh, he's back in. Oh, he keeps going in. And I was like, seems interesting. It's like he teased that he can do some punt, or like he can be used in this offense, but we just haven't seen enough of it to really get an opinion. They also teased the fact that he can do like return duties, whether that's punt or kickoff. I think more punt, but that job kind of seems locked up right now with Nyheim Hines, so I don't think he'll do that. But hey, who knows? Only time will tell with Khalil Shakir. We just don't know anything about him because the Bills didn't really use him that much last year. But, until the end when they had to. The next Met player, James Cook. You either love James Cook or you hate him. Speaking of James Cook, it sounds like Dalvin Cook just got released. I'm just going to quickly talk about that. I don't think the Bills are signing him. We don't got the money. It kind of sucks because I really think it'd be awesome to have both the brothers on here, but if he's not taking a really low deal, it's just not going to happen. I just don't see it. But anyways, getting back to James Cook, I like him, but I understand why some people are hesitant to invest their trust into Cook. The game seemed too fast for him when he initially came out of Georgia, and it took a while for him to kind of settle down and for the game to slow down. And even when later in the year, there were still some bad reads, but there were also some really good reads. I think this year he's going to show he's grown a lot, but for right now, he's too middle in the road. And for that, I can't say he's good or bad, but I'm very optimistic, but I'm trying to be realistic. So for that, he's meh. The next player is probably going to get me in some trouble, but it's Kaiir Elam. I don't like putting Kaiir Elam in the meh category, and I'm very passionate about this. Very, very passionate, because I'm only going to talk about the facts here. He's a first-round pick that hasn't fully secured the CB2 spot. He's battling against a fifth-round cornerback pick in Christian Benford for the same position. You should have no business battling him, let alone Dane Jackson, who was a seventh-round draft pick, who sometimes took the field before both of them, which is like, what? I mentioned earlier in this segment that it's bad when you have a second-round pick like Boogie Basham and AJ Epinesa that barely can make an impact. Can you imagine if you have a first-round pick that can't do that? That's bad. That's really, really bad. It's terrible value. It would suck if this was basically another repeat of Noah Igbenogany. I think I pronounced that right. But he was a first-round corner for the Dolphins, and, I kind of liked him. He was like a little sticky corner, but he was a first-round cornerback for the Dolphins that never saw the field, really, after his rookie year. He was just gone. He was just there. And I don't want this to happen to Kaiir Elam, so I think the Bills need to get the most out of him or do something. I think that would be a huge disappointment of a first-round pick if that happened. But like I said before, we don't know what's going to happen to Kaiir, but let's just trust. Let's let everything unfold first and see what happens. But for right now, our first-round pick, he's battling out for a starting job. And that's not good. All right, I'm going to talk about the good. But before I do that, we're going to take a quick break. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Brother Bill. Now back to the show.
Welcome back, everyone, and thanks for joining me on another episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast. Again, appreciate you listening. We're going to wrap up today's episode by talking about the good draft picks by Brandon Beane. But before we get into that, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast. It'd mean a lot. Okay, the good. 41%, in my opinion, of the 39 picks from 2018 to 2022 have been good. And we're just going to get right into it with that 2018 class, because that was a really, really good class, in my opinion. Starting at the top, number 1, Josh Allen, baby. Superstar quarterback. Cover of Madden 2024, as I mentioned earlier, an MVP candidate a couple of years in a row, and he's just what we've been waiting for as Bills fans. In a 5-year starter of this team, and he's making a lot of money, and that deal's looking like a steal, especially when other quarterbacks are about to get paid a lot of money. Josh Allen is the quarterback that we have been waiting for forever. Not only is this a good pick, it's a phenomenal pick. This pick itself is what brand new GMs are trying to get every time they get a new position. They're like, oh God, we need to get a quarterback. Oh, we need to get a quarterback. Unless obviously they have a franchise quarterback, but those don't grow on trees. You see so many competent GMs basically get the can, and coaches too, because they can't find that guy. Brandon Beane found that guy in Josh Allen, and he's a Buffalo Bill. Hit. Mega hit. The next pick, Tremaine Edmonds. Pretty damn good linebacker, if you ask me. There was, when he first came out, he was like a little slow, kind of like, oh, can this guy even play middle linebacker? And then last year, he just blows up. He blows up so much that he's getting $17-18 million from the Chicago Bears. Again, another 5-year starter on the team. Come on, man. You might not think he's a superstar, and that's fair. He might not be the world's best, franchise middle linebacker when you think of middle linebacker in the NFL, but he's pretty damn good. You could do a lot worse than Tremaine Edmonds, and I don't think there aren't many more linebackers that are ahead of Tremaine Edmonds. So for that, he is an absolute hit. And next pick, Harrison Phillips. Horrible Harry, man. Fan favorite. I loved this pick so much for the value in the 3rd round. And he got a pretty solid deal from the Vikings. And I don't know if you remember, but he kind of put the pressure on Josh Allen. I'm pretty sure he got a sack or two in that game. Maybe not, but regardless, he's pretty good depth, and I think he's a starter over there. But he got the bag, and he's very productive for a 3rd round pick for us, and obviously the Vikings. And that's exactly what you want. Those are more of like the riskier kind of picks where you really take swings, in my opinion. But, excuse me, I think it's what you want to see with your 3rd round pick. If, Terrell Bernard was on this path, I would have definitely put him in this category. But it's not obvious. With Harrison Phillips, he was obviously on the track and a really solid rotational piece that the fans knew, and they loved him for that. So for that, he's a hit. The next hit pick from the 2018 draft, Taron Johnson. Come on, man. He started off kind of like, injury prone, but hey, ever since that year, he's been pretty healthy. All things considered, he's a starter for this team. Oh, and by the way, he's one of the best slot corners in the game. One of the best. And the Bills are one of the first franchises to really just go like, you know what? Slot corners are important. We're going to pay our slot corner. And Taron Johnson is paid very well for what he does, but it's great value. And the pick, I believe he was a 5th round pick, if I'm not mistaken. So he's come a long way from that football, mishap hitting him in the head during the combine drills. I think you know what I'm talking about. Side note, when I heard that the Bills picked the player that got pegged in the head during that drill, the gauntlet drill, I was like, of course the Bills would pick that player. Of course they would pick him. And of course, obviously, he would develop into one of the best starting cornerbacks in the NFL. And for that, again, is the reason why he is a hit. The next hit would be Siran Neal. He's a special teams ace. The Bills loved him so much, they extended him. He's depth at cornerback as well, and I'm pretty sure during that game against the Jets, he was playing cornerback. I think he played a little bit of wide receiver, so he can do a little bit of everything. But the fact that the Bills extended a special teams player is really awesome. And what I really like about it is the fact that it was one of their own. They've gotten some special teams ace off free agency market. So I think about Medikevich, I think about Taiwan Jones, I think about all the other players that they've done. they were looking for their own guy, and they got it in this draft. So, in general, so far, really good. And then we got 2 more out of that draft, too. Wyatt Teller. Really, really solid pick. It's a heartbreaking moment that he's not here on the team. And even though he's not on the Bills, you have to recognize that he is a bona fide starter, borderline superstar at guard. Some might say he's a superstar at guard. And the fact that he doesn't play for the Bills kind of sucks, but there's no denying it. It was a fantastic pick, and the value was there. So for that, he was a hit. The next one, I believe 7th round pick, was Ray McLeod. He's a hit. And some of you guys are like probably thinking, what? Why Ray? Well, he's a return specialist, and he's depth at wide receiver, and even though he didn't stick on the Bills, right? It didn't work out with us. He's found work in this league. He's been on the 49ers. He's been on the Pittsburgh Steelers, I believe, and I think another team. But it just goes to show that that's pretty impressive value for a 7th round pick. In my opinion, he's always going to have a job, and for that, that's a hit. Now let's talk about 2019. Ed Oliver. He's a hit. I was borderline going to put Ed Oliver in the Met area, if I'm being honest. But it's clear that the injuries really affected his performance last year. Many were predicting for Ed Oliver to have like this breakout season last year. And I think it could really happen this year. And with all the pieces around him, I think he's more likely to have that breakout year now than he did last year. And clearly the team likes him, so much so that they extended him and gave him a fairly nice deal at $17 million per year. And, obviously there were some salary cap incentives to make that deal happen, but you don't do that unless you feel fairly good about the player. You think Brandon Beane would just be like, you know what, just going to roll the dice. Just going to roll the dice. Even though the odds aren't stacked in my favor, he wouldn't. I think Brandon Beane would roll the dice. And I will acknowledge this contract is a little bit of a gamble, but I think Brandon Beane is smart enough to realize I think this is going to pan out more likely than it's not. So for that, I think it's a hit. And he's not bottom echelon either. He's not like terrible. Yes, there were other better defensive tackles out of that draft class, but that doesn't mean he's not good. Bills Mafia, he's pretty solid. You could do a lot worse than Ed Oliver. Next one, Devin Singletary. Quickly took over the starting running back role after being drafted. I believe from Frank Gore. Felt like he was the best running back last year, honestly. Anytime he touched the rock, it felt like he produced. I love Singletary. I hope that he does well in Houston. And his career in Buffalo is what I wanted for Zach Moss. Now, clearly that didn't happen. But Devin Singletary developed into a starter. And even though we kept bringing in different running backs and whatnot, it was clear that he was number one. He was number one. And yeah, for that, in a 3rd round pick, I'm cool with it. Very cool with it. The next good player, Dawson Knox. Now, another slow developing position in tight end. It took a while for Knox to come around. But he did have a breakout season about 2 years ago, and then he built on to that by having a very solid season last year as well. And not to mention everything that was going on with his personal life, the passing of his brother. That's tough. And what he and the rest of the team had to go through to still do what he did, it's nothing short of perseverance. And he got extended, obviously. He's a starter, and he means a lot to the team. And I really think he's going to have a really solid year with being paired with Dalton Kincaid. That 12 or 11 and a half personnel is going to be something awesome to see if it works out the way the Bills are hoping for it to work out. Next, Gabriel Davis. The Bills ranked number 2 in total offense last year. Say what you want to say about Gabriel Davis, but he was wide receiver 2 in that number 2 ranked total offense. I think for a 4th round pick that has developed into a wide receiver 2 is extremely good value. Now, he's got some stuff to work on, and his lows are fairly low and very frustrating, and I can acknowledge that. But his highs are so unbelievably high. Kansas City, 4 touchdown game. Think about that Pittsburgh game that he played last year. I lost fantasy in that week by like 150 points strictly because of Gabriel Davis. Not to mention he's a starter, and he usually stays healthy for the most part. Tyler Bass started off kind of shaky though. I blame Corey Bojorquez. Everyone was saying Bass is ass, Bass is ass. You know what? We gave him some time. We got him a holder. And then, whoa, bam, he got extended. One of the upper tier kickers in the NFL. And he's deserved that contract because he's T-Money, T-Bass. Come on, man. He's a starter. And he's good. I love him. I love him. Now, let's talk about Isaiah Hodgins. This was that one player that I mentioned at the top of the show that could fall in the non-applicable, but because he got claimed off the waivers after the Bills cut him by the Giants, I believe, took him. And here's the difference why I didn't put him in that non-applicable area. It's because he made an instant impact with the Giants. Those other players that got claimed or waived or all that other stuff didn't blow up like Isaiah Hodgins did. And, he might not do it again next year, this coming season, but he still did it because he got his opportunity. He's a starter for the Giants right now. I think that's pretty damn good value for a 7th round pick. The next pick, Dane Jackson. I know. Dane Jackson can be very frustrating, and you're probably like, Andrew, how are you going to have Kaiir Elam be in the meh category and have Dane Jackson in the good category? Well, there's about 6 rounds separating those two players from where they were drafted. Dane Jackson was a 7th round pick. Kaiir Elam was a 1st round pick. With that being mentioned, he's outperformed himself by all expectations and is at worst a rotational cornerback too, where Kaiir Elam is a 1st round pick, and we're not even sure if he can firmly claim CB2 spot. Is he a starter? Is Dane Jackson a starter? No, he's probably not. But if your floor at cornerback is Dane Jackson, I don't think you're doing too bad, in my personal opinion. It could be much worse. So for that, he's kind of a hit. Moving on, Gregory Rousseau. I think Gregory Rousseau is going to have a great year this upcoming season. It's 2021, he got 4 sacks. 2022, he built on that, got 4 more. I think he's going to break 10 this year. He just got a new agent. I think he's really motivated. The run defense from him has always been amazing. His arm length can clog up throwing lanes, and he's been a starter. Now, when Von Miller went out, it kind of felt like this line lacked the juice. So I'm going to need to see more out of him if he wants the bag. So I think he can do it, and I think he's good. So I hope you don't prove me wrong, Greg. The next pick that I thought was good was Christian Benford. Last but not least, obviously, 5th round pick that's been battling for the CB2 spot. It's unreal. For the opposite reasons why, again, Kaiir Elam is in the meh category, it are the reasons why Christian Benford is in the good category. And he's also similar to the Dane Jackson situation. To get this out of a 5th round pick is nothing short of phenomenal value. Can he transition to safety? That's been some things that fans have speculated, and the coaching staff has somewhat speculated, but it sounds like he's going to stay at cornerback for this upcoming season. And who knows, if he takes another step forward, we got a great problem on our hands. What do we do with Kaiir if he takes a step forward? And if he doesn't take a step forward, the floor just got raised from Dane Jackson to Kyrie Elam. Fantastic value. So there you have it, Bills Mafia. There you have it. To recap, Brandon Beane's draft picks from 2018 to 2022, I broke it down where 15.4% of them were not applicable, 25.6% of them were bad, 18% of them being meh, and then 41% of them being good, great, awesome value, being hits. This was a pretty intriguing exercise because a lot of the judgment calls can really go either way, and what I say is good, you might say is not good. What I say is bad, you might find meh, and so on and so forth. So I would encourage you, for you to run through this exercise, if you felt like you would do something different, let me know. I personally had a lot of fun, and I would be so curious to see what you would have to say. So let me know what your thoughts are. But that's going to do it for today's episode. So thanks for listening. Make sure to check out our website and the other fantastic shows that we got on the Buffalo FamBase Network. I want to thank you again, and you can find this podcast by searching on all social media podcasts or social media and podcasting platforms, and even on YouTube. And as always, go Bills.